So if you've ever led a project, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got this long list of stakeholders. But let's be real, that list doesn't tell you what to do. It's just names. Today, we're going to change all that. We are turning that static list into a dynamic, powerful strategic tool. We're going to dive deep into the models that take stakeholder analysis from a chore to, honestly, a competitive advantage.
So, picture this. You're running a major project. You've done the work, you've identified over 100 people who have some kind of stake in what you're doing. But here's the problem. Your time is not infinite. You can't be in every meeting, you can't reply to every single email. It's a classic problem, right? With all these voices coming at you, who do you actually listen to? Who gets your very limited time and energy? That's the big question we're answering today. And the solution? It's a big shift in thinking. You have to stop seeing that list of names as just a directory and start seeing it for what it can be, a strategic map. When you map them out, you're not just listing people, you're creating a GPS for navigating the complex human side of your project. You start to see the power dynamics, the key relationships, and exactly where you need to put your focus to keep everything moving forward.
Okay, so why do we even need to bother with these models in the first place? Well, it all boils down to one single, absolutely crucial resource: your time. You just can't engage with every stakeholder at the same level of intensity. It's not just inefficient, it's impossible. These models, they give you the logic for strategic classification. They make sure your efforts are focused where they'll have the biggest impact.
Think about it. Without a system, you're just reacting. You're constantly playing whack-a-mole, just responding to whoever shouts the loudest. And that is a surefire way to get a project off track. What these models do is they give you that system. They group stakeholders by key traits like their power or their interest. And just like that, you move from this chaotic, reactive firefighting to a smart, data-driven strategy for managing all the human risks on your project.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to start with the one tool that, honestly, every single project manager has to know like the back of their hand, the power/interest grid. This isn't just some abstract theory, okay? This is a practical, visual tool you'll use day in and day out. And yeah, for anyone studying, you absolutely have to know this inside and out for the PMP exam. Its real power is in its simplicity.
Okay, let's focus on the top half of this grid, the high-power players. The top right box, managed closely, makes perfect sense, right? These are your sponsors, your key execs. High power, high interests, they need your constant attention. But now, look over at that keep satisfied group. These are tricky. They have high power but low interest. Think of a city regulator or a senior VP from a totally different department. The strategy here is precision. Give them exactly what they need to stay happy and nothing more. The risk? If you over-communicate, you might accidentally spark their interest, and suddenly you've got intense scrutiny you're not ready for.
Now, let's drop down to the other half of the grid, the low-power stakeholders. It is so easy to just dismiss this group, but that is a huge mistake. That keep informed category, low power but high interest, these folks can become your biggest advocates or your loudest critics. Keeping them in the loop is key. And that monitor group? You don't ignore them, you watch them. Why? Because someone who's in the monitor box today could get a promotion tomorrow, gain influence, and suddenly jump to a whole new quadrant. This grid is a live tool, not a one-and-done deal.
So that power/interest grid is your workhorse. It's fantastic for most situations. But what happens when things get really complex? When you've got a tricky social or political landscape to deal with? Well, that's when a simple 2x2 grid just isn't going to cut it. You need to add more layers, more depth. And that is where tools like the Stakeholder Cube and the Salience Model come into play.
So, the Stakeholder Cube, it literally takes that flat grid and pops it up into a third dimension. And what's that third dimension? Attitude. Now, just think about that for a second. Someone with high power and high interest is a key player, we know that. But if their attitude is negative, they're not just a key player anymore, they're a potential saboteur. A flat grid might not show you that critical difference. The cube, though, it makes that risk flash like a giant red warning light on your dashboard, telling you exactly who you need to focus on to neutralize that threat.
Next up, we've got the Salience Model. This one is purpose-built for those huge, sprawling projects with what feels like a million stakeholders. Instead of a grid, this model uses 3 overlapping circles, 3 attributes, to figure out who is most salient or prominent. And those 3 attributes are power to actually influence things, the urgency of their request, and the legitimacy of their involvement in the first place.
And the real gold is where all 3 of those circles overlap. Anyone who has all 3, power, urgency, and legitimacy, is what we call a definitive stakeholder. These are your absolute, non-negotiable top priorities. And the brilliant part is how dynamic this is. A dormant stakeholder who just has power can become definitive overnight if some crisis blows up in their area. Your strategy has to be ready to shift in an instant.
All right, enough theory. How does this stuff actually play out in the real world, when the pressure's on? Let's take what we've learned and apply these models to our high-rise construction case study. This is where we go from abstract ideas to actual, concrete decisions.
So take a look at this breakdown. We've classified 3 very different stakeholders, and each one gets a totally different strategy. Notice how the project sponsor gets those weekly deep dive briefings. Why? Because they're in that Manage Closely box. But the city inspector, we are not bothering them with weekly updates. Nope, we just make sure our permit paperwork is absolutely perfect to keep them satisfied. And the fire department? They become a definitive stakeholder, but only during a very specific phase, like final safety checks. This shows how you can and should use different models for different people, or even for the same person at different points in time.
And this is so critical. It's not just who you talk to, it's how you talk to them. That's the direction of influence model. You have to adjust your communication style. When you're talking to senior management, you talk strategy and business value. That's upward. With your team, it's about clear leadership and delegation. That's downward. With suppliers or regulators, it's more formal diplomacy, it's negotiation. That's outward. And with other managers at your level, it's all about collaboration. That's sideward. And trust me, using the wrong style in the wrong direction can be a huge mistake.
Okay, for everyone with the PMP exam on their mind, this part is for you. Really lean in here. The exam just loves to test these models with tricky scenario questions. They're designed to see if you can actually apply this stuff under pressure. So let's break down the most common traps so you don't fall for them.
So the biggest trap they'll set for you on the exam is what I call the static model myth. It's the mistake of thinking your stakeholder map is a photograph instead of a live video feed. You'll get a scenario question where some low-interest stakeholder suddenly gets very interested because the project moved into a new phase. The test is checking one thing. Do you realize that your analysis has to be continuous? These models are living documents. If you don't update them, your strategy is already out of date.
Here's another big one, the Manage Closely misconception. It's so tempting to assume that anyone with high power automatically goes into the Manage Closely bucket, but that's just wrong. The correct PMP logic is all about being precise. If a stakeholder has high power, but their interest is low, the right strategy is keep satisfied. Overmanaging them is a waste of your time, it's a waste of their time, and honestly, it can even come across as annoying. The exam will definitely test if you get that nuance.
Whew! Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from simple grids to 3D cubes all the way to exam traps. So let's bring it all together. Let's synthesize all of this down to the core principles you absolutely need to remember whether you're sitting in an exam or sitting in a project kickoff meeting. So here's what it all comes down to. First, your models are dynamic. They have to be living documents. Second, just classifying people is useless if it doesn't drive a clear strategy. That's the whole point. Third, when things get really complex, the Salience model is your best friend. Fourth, always be aware of your communication direction. And finally, never forget the ultimate goal here. All of this is to help you strategically invest your most valuable, non-renewable asset, your time.
And let me leave you with one last, really practical piece of advice. Always make sure your model is fit for purpose. What does that mean? Well, for a small internal project, a simple power/interest grid is probably all you need. Don't overcomplicate it. Before that massive high-rise project we talked about, you'll absolutely want to use multiple models. Think of it like building a strategic dashboard that gives you a complete real-time view of your project's entire human landscape.
So look at how far we've come. We've gone from a flat, messy list to a sophisticated, multi-dimensional map. You now have the tools to classify every single player and really understand the human ecosystem of your project. But that leads to the next most important question. You've got the map, you know who the key players are, so where do you actually focus your energy for maximum impact? That's a huge topic, and it's exactly where we're going next.